Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Attree Unplugged. Today's guest is Gareth May, a sales rep who's been with Attree Real Estate for 10 years. Let's get to know him a little bit. Hey mate, how you doing?
Good, buddy. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. So look, coming up to 10 years in the industry, all 10 years of those with Attree Real Estate?
Yeah, so I started my real estate career with Attree, and still here to this day.
Beautiful. Let's go back to the start. Local boy, what was the goal originally? What did you want to be growing up?
Growing up, I actually wanted to be an aircraft pilot or an airline pilot, and I progressed to working offshore. So when I left school, I went and started an entry level role working FIFO. So I went straight up to Barrow Island, like pretty much finished school on the Friday, went up the following week, and then from there progressed to getting a gig offshore. And then once I spent probably close to 9 to 10 years working offshore, oil and gas in a surveying role, more at a technician point of view, and then got an opportunity. They were offering volunteer redundancies, and I took the opportunity to make a transition in my career, and wasn't still quite sure what I was going to do, and I was still toying with the idea of potentially getting a pilot's license. And yeah, I'm glad I didn't, because a couple of years later there was COVID, and the real estate market obviously took off, and then the international travel and domestic travel, especially here in WA, just came to a dead stop.
Yep.
So
Let's backtrack a little bit. So oil and gas on the rigs. We've talked about it before. You've seen some pretty cool places. What's one of the favourite places you've seen?
I was on the ship, so we were like in the middle of the ocean, seeing a lot of places that traditionally a lot of people wouldn't have seen, and quite a lot of sort of remote towns in certain countries, like all through Southeast Asia, Africa, South America. I sailed across the Pacific, so across the equator and the international date line in one trip. But going back to the question, as far as favourite places, it'd be tough.
Tough when you've seen so many.
Especially went through remote parts of Indonesia, like through all the islands, through Biak and Sumatra. So yeah, some beautiful places, which is outside of the traditional, obviously, Bali and like Jakarta.
Yep. So you took the redundancy, and then you land in real estate. Do you remember the decision behind that, and sort of Attree as the brand? How did you get there?
So the decision, when I was working offshore, spent a lot of time on realestate.com. So reading a lot of property investing books and tried getting a bit of knowledge around that. So that, I guess, probably led into the love of real estate. And I guess going into real estate is probably a little bit different to what I would have expected it to be. From my side of things, you're thinking like land size, bedrooms, bathrooms, and a lot more of the technical part of it. But I guess the reality of real estate, it's more a relationship and interaction, meeting with people, speaking with people, helping people, as opposed to like valuing properties. That's obviously a very important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
As far as working for Attree, so I was living in Harrisdale at the time. Grew up in the hills in Kelmscott, so yeah, quite familiar with the local area. And Attree, I used to drive past their office quite a lot. So I gave Kevin a call, and he just said to come on down.
Yep.
And my first,
pretty standard from Kev.
Yeah. So yeah, first interaction with Attree was what we used to do was the caravan.
Yep.
So we sort of jump on the little minibus. I don't know if any of the long-time listeners still remember what that looks like. But we used to go around and look at all the different properties that each of our reps had.
Yep.
So that was the first interaction with Attree, and it was fun. Everybody was welcoming, and it sort of just transitioned from there.
What was it like the early days with Attree Real Estate? Obviously, coming into now, you look back, you know how difficult it is to start it all for yourself. What were some of the challenges, and how was it all going for you the first couple of years?
First couple of years, so I started in 2015, and I don't know if anybody remembers the Perth real estate market back in 2015. It was pretty average, and my we started down at Thornley office, so that just opened. So we wanted the reps that was positioned down there, and days on market were like 90, 100 days at least.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very soft market, lots of stock. The list to sell ratio was probably like, I mean, out of two properties that went to market, potentially only one would sell.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very, very different. But for me, I guess going into that market, it was, I didn't know any different. So everybody else was like, they've just come back off a peak in 2013, 2014. So the market had sort of made a fairly significant correction.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't aware of that. So to me, it was just go out there and help people.
Yeah.
Find listings, and didn't really let it get in my head. So, and again, obviously the market's a completely different market, so it's a full 180 now.
Yep.
But again, I mean that creates its own challenges as well.
Mm-hmm.
In dealing with high volumes of buyers, and just making sure you're able to help as many of those without. Again, it's a very challenging market,
Yeah.
so you've got to try and help them as much as you
Best you
possibly
can. Absolutely. If you sit sort of where you are now and you look back, and sort of any advice you'd maybe give yourself, or even sort of young reps that are just starting in the industry now, what's sort of some of the advice that you would give?
Um, Probably the biggest piece of advice is to keep it simple. When I started, you're trying, I mean, you listen to all these different real estate podcasts, you listen to all this different information, and there's so much information out there, and you're trying to implement 10 different things. But over time, I mean, I'm conscious of just stripping everything I can possibly strip out of my business just to simplify that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's unnecessary, just to make the process as best as I can. And then just once you've simplified it so far back, then you just make the incremental changes.
Yep.
There's no point in trying to do 10, 20, 30 different things. Just focus on one. Once you've clocked that,
Get it right.
then work on the next thing, work
Mm-hmm.
on the next thing, work on the next thing.
Yep.
And it evolves. But again, everything that you do with one listing, you want to have a system and a process to be able to do that for volume.
Mm-hmm.
So you do that for 50. There's no point, doing something that you're not able to replicate continuously and continue to service.
100%. It's a good little segue into, you were the first rep at Attree to implement a PA. Yep. Talk me through the decision making. You're talking about as a business, what are sort of the considerations you need to make before sort of bringing on a PA, and sort of how's that gone for you, and sort of what's worked well and what's some of the challenges?
Bringing on a PA is something, looking back, is something I certainly wish I did probably a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can get so bogged down in a lot of the administrative processes. And again, I mean, the Attree admin team are very, very good at what they do, and they handle a lot of volume. But just having somebody there to prepare things, and just sort of manage the chaos,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, of day to day. I mean, the phone's ringing constantly, there's emails. So to service more people, you definitely need that back end support.
Yep.
But again, it's all come back down to systems and processes, and again, it comes back down to that simplicity. Just keep it simple and just follow a set process.
Yep.
Because I mean, again, sort of coming back to working offshore, working a very technical aspect, is that every process that we did was, and if you didn't follow the process and if you sort of stepped slightly out of it,
Mm-hmm.
it could potentially cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of downtime.
Yep.
So you just follow a very simple checklist and manage that process.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to bounce ideas off each other, and it's good to have somebody there to have a bit of a laugh with, and sort of, I mean, real estate can be a very lonely business,
Yep.
so it's good to have a great team at Attree,
Mm-hmm.
and then good people to bounce off.
You touched on it briefly before in terms of the market and what it was like when you started, and sort of a 180 to where we are now. We've had this chat before, and it's quite interesting. But and not many people probably would have the same answer to you. But your answer to me was you like it when the market's tough. Tell me why.
When the market's tough, there's a skill to it.
Mm-hmm.
The market being obviously buoyant as it is,
Yep.
and again, you hear people say all the time, the houses will just sell themselves.
Yep.
And I mean, the reality of that is, I mean, anybody could put a sign out in front of their house.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody could take a couple of photos, but it's the quality
Yep.
and that interaction and handling of that is where a good price can potentially become a great price. But when the market's tough, it's how you handle that. And I mean, pricing properties is so important in that market because everybody's optimistic,
Mm-hmm.
but you've also got to be realistic as well. And the agents, when I started, through the process of that 4 or 5 years where we had that downturn, the number of agents that just dropped out because they couldn't bring that together. Yeah, it was interesting, and I mean they've all started to come back now. Again, when the market turns again, you'll start to see some of those agents which just relying on the hot market potentially drop out.
So you reckon that's going to be something that'll happen again?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I mean, as the market starts to slow down, days on market start to push out,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to handle that part of the process, it's a different way of doing things.
So you can take either one of these questions. What's been either your favorite sale or your most difficult sale through your career?
It'd be hard to, I guess, pinpoint one of my favourite
Yep.
sales, as there is so many.
Yep.
But again, early on in my career, I picked up a listing out in Hilbert, and again, for price back then, it was such a high price relative to what everything else was selling.
Yep.
And I guess I was probably a little bit naive to that. But I mean, off the back of that, I ended up listing a property that was linked to the subject sale. I helped the buyers find a block of land.
Yep.
Years gone by, I ended up selling the 2 blocks of land they subdivided off the back of that. But that was early on. That was probably one of my favourite
Yep.
sales. And then of late, again, there was a deal where there was like 5 people that interacted, or 5 people linked to it, but it all sort of just fell into place. It was just the perfect storm
Yep.
for it all to line up.
Yep.
Just the way it did. So yeah, again, very very special. There's plenty of good sales, and yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Last question for yourself. In terms of obviously, like I said, you've got the PA. How does sort of the team, or how does it all look for you in 5 years' time? What's sort of the goals, or what would you like to see for yourself?
As far as 5 years time, I mean, I'd like to get up to around sort of that 150 to 200 sales,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always run the different scenarios as to what that would look like in terms of a team structure.
Yep.
And whether or not, I mean, again, it's not just a case of just hiring people to get to that volume.
Yep.
You've got to hire good people,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to have the processes to back the people as well.
Yep.
But again, I mean, sometimes you see all these agents with teams of 5 people selling 250 homes, when I mean they could possibly strip that back to 3 people,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially still sell 200 homes. So it's not just a case of just adding people for the sake of adding people, but
Got to add the value.
yeah, I think that the perfect sort of structure would be like myself, Courtney, or a PA,
Yep.
and then a sales or a buyer support.
Yep. Yep.
Just to get to that level.
Just off the back of that, I do have one more question. You're talking those sort of numbers. Obviously, you've got a couple of young children. How does that work-life balance? How do you juggle that?
Yeah, good question. I would say Nat would probably maybe have a different answer to it, but it's I wouldn't say it's a balance,
Yep.
but it's a relationship, I guess. I mean, Nat's very supportive, so she manages the household. She does that very very well. But I mean, I'll work late nights, and it'll be very very busy, and then it'll slow down. So again, you sort of got to take the ebbs and flows,
Mhm.
just as to how you manage that. But again, I can go to the kids' assemblies. I coach his footy team. All these different things. I mean, traditionally, if I was still working like on a ship, I'd miss half of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Whereas now I can just pop out of the office. I just manage my diary,
Mhm.
to work around that. And again, yeah, I mean, we've got school holidays now, so like traditionally we'll go away, but this time we're staying at home. But I mean, I can take a couple of days off just to
Doing
go
things
do
here and
stuff
there.
with the kids,
Yep.
and then still be able to work in the evening.
Yep.
So yeah,
Beautiful. I think she'll like that answer.
yeah, very diplomatic.
All right, beautiful. Thanks very much for joining me today, mate. I appreciate your time. Everyone, like and subscribe. I'll tag sort of Gaz's Instagram handle and things like that in the comments below as well. So go and drop him a follow. He's doing some really good stuff. So appreciate your time, mate.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.